Thank you very much. And I'm honored to be invited to open the 2020 Heritage Alliance for the New Silk Road workshop, roundtable workshop, Heritage at Risk, Connecting the Tangible and Intangible. I want to thank Dr. Daniel Poog, Dean of Humanities and Sciences at Nazarbayev University, for inviting me, and Dr. Gultas Kermanbai, head of the Rukami Zangru Center at Nazarbayev University. I also wish to welcome the many students, academics, and scientists from Nazarbayev University and around the world for joining me in this roundtable. In the midst of the pandemic of 2020, I am speaking from my home in Syracuse, New York. The theme of my keynote talk is the why of cultural heritage, the DNA of heritage in the midst of global crisis. As nations have instituted lockdowns, we have found many aspects of our day-to-day lives transformed. Before the pandemic, many international and national researchers would have traveled to Nur-Sultan, Kazakhstan. Now we use Zoom technology. I call upon each and every one at this conference to envision a future for heritage studies all over the world, not just along the Silk Road. Does future sustainability rely upon actual tourist travel, or shall we turn to the virtual realities of cultural heritage? We must go beyond the solutions of how we preserve our cultural heritage to the answers of why we would protect cultural objects. The tangible objects of cultural heritage include artifacts, monuments, settlements, and the intangible cultural heritage includes languages, traditions, rituals, ceremonies, religions, philosophies, and worldviews. The tangible bleeds into the intangible. Colin Sterling and Rodney Harrison, in the 2020 book, Deterritorializing the Future, Heritage in, of, and after the Anthropocene, define individual and collective modes of inheritance as genetic, cultural, artistic, and economic. What kind of cultural heritage do we want for our children, our grandchildren, and for humanity at large? What is vulnerable, yet precious and sustainable, that is worthy of our social, economic, and political efforts? In the Republic of Kazakhstan, there are recent World Heritage inscriptions along the Chang'an Tian Shan Silk Road network, a 5,000 kilometer area. 33 places have been inscribed, most in China, 8 in Kazakhstan, and 3 in Kyrgyzstan. Included are some of our observations from our own field work and the photographs of Perry Turtelot. The why of cultural heritage. Let's start with the dominant indigenous culture of the Republic of Kazakhstan, Kazakh nomadic culture. I focus on the Kazakh herding household, usually a multi-generational family that continues to herd sheep, goats, cattle, horses, and sometimes camels. These herding households move from winter to summer pastures in long distance movements and in short distance movements. The herding household embodies the tough resilience needed to live in harsh natural conditions. Kazakh knowledge of Tengri, sky, has both an all-encompassing material presence and a spiritual meaning. Tengri, a Turkic word denoting the great deity as well as sky, is also a worldview by which humans, animals, and nature exist in balance. As humanity faces increasing environmental destruction due to climate change, Tengri has both a tangible and intangible significance to the Kazakh herdsmen and to contemporary society. Kazakh herding households live in harsh conditions of changing weather, the search for seasonal grazing and water to sustain their herds, and they also inhabit steppes, mountains, and deserts. They're objects made of natural materials, wood, leather, wool, and hair, and their sustenance, meat, milk, hummus, and plants are part of a rich cultural heritage. Why are the practices and embedded knowledge of Kazakh pastoral nomadism so essential for a Kazakhstani citizenry? The indigenous knowledge system of pastoral nomadic livelihood provides contemporary citizens with important cultural values that can be included in the traditions of other ethnic groups. As contemporary life takes people away from nature, basic subsistence and ethical ways of living right remain part of a cultural heritage of feasting, naming ceremonies, memorializing the dead, ritual, and the ancestors. All such material practices and cosmological principles are a template for being in the world, regardless of changing conditions. When contemporary societies face global crises, such as pandemic disease or ecological disaster or armed conflicts, our core values and ethics become the basis for facing humans' suffering. I call this the building blocks or DNA of cultural heritage. The diversity and richness of indigenous worldviews are not commodities to be bought and sold. In a nation like Kazakhstan with the many different ethnic groups, there are multiple sources of cultural heritability. These diverse building blocks are the foundation for cultural heritage, which is not static, but it's a process and a moving target. In 2003, the President of the Republic of Kazakhstan, under the program Cultural Heritage, restored 78 monuments and designated the intangible cultural heritage of yurts, ites, which is a kind of poetry improvisation, usually through music, and kus, which is Kazakh symphonic music. These later became World Heritage inscriptions. The same landscapes used by contemporary pastoral nomads in the Republic of Kazakhstan are also the places where we have a long historical background going from early humans into the more recent histories of the Neolithic, Bronze Age, Iron Age, and medieval periods. In the Republic of Kazakhstan, the increase in the development of infrastructure has affected these places. Here I show you a slide that documents an area of Talgar, about 25 kilometers east from Almaty, and it shows you on one side of the slide the 2004 landscape, and then in 2018 you see the increase in houses, roads, and other infrastructure, and you also see an overlay of our survey showing you the many kurgans, some of which were destroyed by this infrastructure development. I call these past cultural landscapes memoryscapes, this particular memoryscape happened within a decade of our lifetime. Do these cultural landscapes require our protection, preservation, and conservation? There are three different constituencies who have to answer this question. One, local and community members in regional districts. Two, heritage experts such as architects, geographers, city planners, archaeologists, historians, and ethnographers. And three, national and international institutions dedicated towards preserving cultural heritage. How can the cultural heritage community aid in developing sustainable development? Here's one example. At the University College London, under the direction of Professor Tim Williams, the initiative Central Asian Archaeological Landscapes digitizes and preserves the archives, records, and photographs of archaeological sites, monuments, and other objects from Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and China. In Kazakhstan, the Margulin Institute of Archaeology and the firm Archaeological Expertise contribute to the Central Asian Archaeological Landscapes Project. Another recent international outreach project is the Future Gold exhibition at the Fitzwilliams Museum at Cambridge University, featuring artifacts from 2018-19 excavations from the Saka and Turkic periods of Burel and Shiliti in the Altai Mountains of eastern Kazakhstan. The why of cultural heritage. In 2020, we have faced this devastating global crisis. In Central Asia and Kazakhstan, lockdowns and economic slowdowns have impacted cultural heritage projects, from excavations to museum exhibitions and international conferences. And in many places, international tourism and scientific research projects have been impeded. We must ask ourselves, why cultural heritage? Number one, does cultural heritage only translate into sustainable development as tourism? How about fostering an increased local and regional pride in heritage objects, sites, and monuments? And number two, if international tourism dwindles, how may we encourage local and regional tourism and local commitment to developing sustainable cultural heritage through schools, community efforts, local museums, and heritage places? And three, as we stay at home, how can we contribute to the many ways that we can share our local heritage with the larger global arena? Now is the time to develop virtual museum exhibitions, tours of sites and monuments, online educational training, digitization of local archives and artifact collections, and the production and distribution of films, blogs, and podcasts through social media. What makes a human culture worthy of a sustainable future? Human accomplishments remind us of humanity's history, one in which civilizations, cultures, and societies rose and flourished, collapsed, and fell. Critical cultural heritage is a process, not a static set of objectives. In times of crisis, more than ever before, we as global citizens are mandated to protect, preserve, and conserve the vulnerable resources of humanity in its multiple expressions and rich diversity. The objects and knowledge we choose for our cultural heritage must express those values and ethics that give individuals, families, communities, and nations hope and inspiration for a better future. Thank you very much. And I hope that your roundtable and conference goes exceedingly well.